All right, so today last time we talked about epic, and that an epic is a poem, and that God has written a story for you before you were even born. And that not only did he write that story for you, did he create you before, but he created works for you before you were even here, which is just beautiful. Anytime you make something, actually a friend of ours, Wesley's dad, he's a potter. And when you start to make something, you make it intentionally, and it's going to do this. This is what its purpose is. And that's what the Lord's done with us. So today we're going to talk about, though, redefining epic.
We tend to think about epic as being really huge, really almost like foreign and exotic. You know, it's Guatemala, it's not the grocery store, right? But we want to redefine it, because that's what we think. We're like, yes, Lord, send me to the nations. And he's like, I can't send you to the grocery store. Like, what's going on? So we have to redefine what epic and poema really looks like in our lives. May it include a mission field? Of course. But everywhere we go and everything that we do is part of that mission field. And so redefining epic, just making it our everyday epic. And so when we think about David, sometimes we think the exotic things about David. We think king, we think bear killer, like he wrestles lions and bears, grabs them by the beard. That seems pretty exotic and big to me. But remember, David was a lot of things. He was a son, he was a brother, he was a DoorDash delivery boy, right? He was a lot of exotic things, but before that, he was a lot of ordinary things. And so that's kind of what we're going to get into today.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we disqualify us because it's not epic, it's not king, prophet, I'm not a psalmist, or I'm not writing these things. But David was just faithful everywhere he was. Everything he did, everything that God brought across his path, he was faithful with it, whatever that is. Oh, the next verse.
Acts 13,
yes.
Verse 36, and this is on your paper for you. It says, for David, after he had served his own generation by the will of God, fell asleep. What's beautiful about this verse is the inclusion of this word served. After he had served his own generation by the will of God. Served means, it's this wonderful Greek word, which I'm going to mispronounce right now, hypereteo.
Sounds good.
All right, sounds good. It means to act as a rower, to row, to minister, to render services.
And why that's important, we're going to show you the picture of why that's important. Roman warships had this is called the Roman bireme, and I don't think you can see it very good, but you had the people commanding the orders, and the rowers were underneath. They're underneath. They don't even see where they're going. Mm-hmm. This is that word, to act as a hyperteo, comes from the verb that means to act as an under rower. Not even somebody like we think as a rowing boat. We see where we're going. I want to go over there. I'm going to row this way. No, they're underneath. They're blindly following orders. Mm-hmm. David, after he under-rowed, God gave the order, whatever that order was, I'm going to do it. I don't have to understand it. I'm going to obey. Because I know you, right? Because they know him. And so you can see here, these guys are underneath that, down under that ship. And they couldn't even see. They're blindly following those orders. Mm-hmm. And not only that, they're in sync with when he gives the order. There's a timing to it. Mm-hmm. I'm not late. Have you ever tried to canoe or... The oars, it's all weird, especially if you're trying to do it with someone else. Maybe you've got one, and so you've got to follow the order at the right time, and it can be awkward at first, but then you get your bearings. That's what that word is. Isn't that so cool? It's not, David was king. When you think for David, after he had been king during his own generation, if we were writing it, it might say that. After David was king by the will of God. No, after he had served. what did serving look like to David? We're going to read 1 Samuel 17 in a minute. I jumped out ahead.
It's okay. I'll jump back.
Jump back.
So serving can look like a lot of different things. And it depends on where you are and what is needed and all of those sorts of things. So we're going to go back to those, what's the object? Name that object. See what we've come up with. Our first object says, use me to consume and transport beverages from place to place. I'm generally cylindrical in shape, of various sizes, and am made from impermeable materials. All right. Our first object is a water bottle, right? Some type of bottle or cup that takes liquids, right? Water bottle. Second object, I'm usually used in a pair. While held in a hand, I make lots of noise or music, depending on who's holding me. So we got cymbals. Ooh, we got maracas.
Oh, that's good. All those are good.
These are all good, right? So we were thinking maracas, right? We've got some maracas here made out of water bottles, in fact. Seen all those teacher Pinterest boards with like the make your own maracas. This is a terrible idea.
Not for real church use.
No. Object 3, I can be big or small with varying shapes and colors. People fill me with dirt and seeds. Even though what grows is rooted in their spot, I can be moved from place to place. A flower pot, a planter, exactly. This is another, if you can see the picture, this is another planter made from a water bottle.
Interesting.
How interesting. How interesting that people do this. But it has a point. Object 4, I stay in the great outdoors and spread water all around. I do my best work in the garden, but your kids love using me on hot days too. Water hose, a sprinkler, right? Here's another sprinkler made from another water bottle. People are so inventive. Number 5, I'm a home, but not for people. I offer plenty of natural light, but no privacy. I like to keep my thermostat high, even if it's cold outside. Don't worry, the heat will grow on you. A greenhouse terrarium? Yeah.
Made out of?
Made out of water bottles.
Water bottle.
Right? So look, we got all of these different objects that have different descriptions and purposes, but they were all made out of the same thing. Because when you're a vessel, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, he can use you for whatever purpose he has for you in that moment. So though I'm a water bottle, I can be a maraca. Though I'm a king, I can be a shepherd. Though I'm a king, I can be a psalmist, right? So wherever we are, if we're a vessel and we will serve just like David did, it doesn't matter that you're a water bottle, he can make you into a sprinkler, right? Because he has need. Is there not a cause? Is there not a need for you in that moment?
It's just about the being willing. I'm willing. Right? The Lord's looking for willing vessels. That's it.
Not even like super spiritually gifted vessels, right? It's the serving that opens up the door to the gifts. It's not the gifts that open the door to the serving. Does that make sense? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which came first, the gift or the serving? The serving came first, right? And out of that comes the gifts.
Out of that, it starts to flourish, and you start to see, oh, this is really my spot. This is really where I fit.
It gives the opportunity for them. Yeah.
I love when you think about Jesus. We've got Matthew 20:28. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life a ransom for many. I was thinking about how the night of the Last Supper.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus is about to pay the price for humanity. He's the King of all kings. He shouldn't have to wash people's feet, right? But he sees the need there. Nobody's filling it. And he sees the need, and he starts serving. Like in the lowest, I mean, think about feet those days. Like they're out on walking like horses, donkeys. That's why that was the lowest servant's position, because you're cleaning up crud off of those feet. And nobody really wanted to do that there. I don't even really like feet. Do you guys like feet? I mean, like, if they talk about footwear, I mean, I think it's great. But it's like, oh, you know, when we helped with young adults at our old church, we were invited by like the older group, I don't know what you would call them, but by the older group to come to the foot washing service. And all of us were like, oh, Peter, we're totally Peter. You shall not wash my feet, you know? Like people start getting uncomfortable with that, right? But it's just serving Jesus, our Lord and Savior. He set the example and served in a way that Peter's like, that's beneath you, right?
Yeah.
You're better than that, Jesus. You're the King of Kings. We know who you are. But it says in that scripture, Jesus knowing who he was and where he was going, where he had come from and where he's going, was able to stoop down like that. Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
And doing what he saw the Father do, right? Doing what he saw the Father do. All right, so we are going, it's really dark. We're going to 1 Samuel 17, okay? So we did print it out for you in the column sheet. But 1 Samuel 17, if you just prefer your Bible, we're going to look at a big chunk here from 17 to 58. Big chunk here. But this is a really good look at David. At this point, he's been anointed king secretly by Samuel, right? Secret ceremony. He is anointed king, but he is not officially the king in Israel. That's still Saul. And so this is in chapter 17, this is, of course, David and Goliath.
Yeah. Okay, and so you had Play-Doh when you came in. This is not Bob the Tomato. This is going to be David. I want you guys to make a little David face. I know that's so weird, but there's a reason for it. Make a little, I've got toothpicks. Make a little David face. The reason we're doing this is as we read this, I want you to hear, all of this is about, we're fearfully and wonderfully made, right? God made us good, but the world is going to tell us that we're not. And every time that you hear somebody tell David he's not good or he can't do something, I want you to mar that. I want you to hit David. That's awful, but I want you to show what that looks like so you can actually see, and then we're going to see how the Father makes things better. They need that. Thank you,
Yeah, because some of them are having a hard time getting them out because Play-Doh is usual. Do you want to, anybody want a toothpick to mar your David? Scratch him up.
We tapped into our inner kindergarten teachers.
Hands-on day.
Wouldn't it?
We're going to fix them later. Don't worry.
We'll fix them.
Mm-hmm. No, you're good.
Now, we are not looking for the masterpiece, the David, so you don't have to worry that it's all, some of you are very artistic, I'm sure, and some of you are not, like me. Like, that's as good as it's getting today. Oh, I like it. That's really good. That's
Yes.
good.
So as we read through this and you hear something that might be something that in other circumstances might make David feel bad or might affect or shape his view of himself or his personality or his internal dialogue, then you want to reflect that on your David head. Okay, so whether you use the toothpick or you just smash him a little bit, you go for it.
Have fun.
All right, so we're going to read through 1 Samuel 17, starting at verse 17. It says, Then Jesse said to his son David, Take now for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain and these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp, and carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare, and bring back news of them. Now Saul and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. So David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with the keeper, and took the things and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to fight and shouting for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. And David left his supplies in the hands of the supply keeper, ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers.
Okay, so because it's so long. He's already been anointed king. Chapter 16, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago. And so you look here, and his brothers, his oldest brothers, have gone on to battle. And his dad, he's out with the sheep. His dad says, I need you to take cheese, these cheeses, up to, cheeses, isn't that funny? Take these cheeses up to your brothers at where the army is. Notice verse 20 and 21, same words, the same phrases applied both times. It says, so David arose early in the morning, left the sheep with a keeper. So he had been entrusted with these sheep. And before he's been given a new job, before he moves on to the next job, cheese taker, Uber taker, before he's gone to the next job, he makes sure that somebody's watching after the sheep. He does the same thing with the cheese. He says, verse 22, and David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper. Left with the keeper, and if you look it up in the Hebrew, it's to entrust to a watchman or guard. He doesn't see you later, sheep. Peace out, I'm done. I'm on to bigger and better cheeses. I'm on to bigger and better things. No, he made everything that came to his hand, he made sure it was taken care of until he could pass it off to the next person. I think that's so powerful. I think it shows that God found a man who was after his heart.
Yeah.
My heart is to take care of whatever I've entrusted you with. Take care of it until I ask you to do the next thing. Powerful, powerful. That's intentional. That wording there, putting that in is intentional.
Mm-hmm. It's the same type of language used in Genesis when
Yes.
God told Adam to guard and keep the garden. It's the same word there. So keep is guarding, it's protecting. And so David is a keeper. He's a guardian. That's why he is a shepherd and then the shepherd of Israel.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
All right, so we left off at 22 here. And David left his supplies in the hands of the supply keeper, ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers. Then as he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines, and he spoke according to the same words. So that's talking, though, about earlier in chapter 17, we skipped it, how Goliath was taunting the Israelites.
For 40 days and 40 nights. It's
Yes.
I'm the champion of the Philistines, you give me your champion.
So David heard them. So now David is not just hearing about them, he hears it happen. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. So the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?
He doesn't have a covenant with God. We do, people, we do. And David's like, how dare he? He's not defying us. When the enemy's taunting us, he's not defying us. He's defying the God in us.
Right.
I don't think we understand that, or really, I don't think I always understand. When the enemy's coming against me, he's coming against what God's doing in me. David realizes that here.
And the people answered him in this manner, saying, so shall it be done for the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David. And he said, "Why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle." Are we marring up our Davids?
There should be several scars.
There's some scars there. Why did you come down here? With whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. Remember, back in chapter 16, Eliab, the oldest, the one who, Samuel said, surely this is the one that God has chosen to be king, was not chosen to be king. So here he is, here comes David. Maybe there's some jealousy here now. But he is like, I know what's really in your heart. God said, not to look on their physical appearance, because he was looking at their heart. And here is Eliab, the brother, who is now saying, I know what's really in your heart. God didn't know what was in your heart, but I know it was there, right?
And I think the enemy does that to us. The enemy does it. We have to, I'm sorry, go to the chapter 16. We don't have it written there, but I want you to see this real quick, how intentional God is about trying to affirm you, if we will hear it. Chapter 16, 1 Samuel 16. So God's rejected Saul because Saul didn't obey him fully. He obeyed partially. He was afraid of man. Chapter 16 says, he tells him, 16:1. Now the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons. When we were talking about this, was it you that said this?
I don't know.
Okay. So we talk a lot, so it's hard to know who said what. So we were talking about it, and God specifically tells him, I want you to go to Jesse, the Bethlehemite. I've picked one of his sons. He could have said, go to Jesse of Bethlehem. His son David is going to be king. He didn't do that. Mm-hmm. God is intentional. He made every single one of those boys come before, not this one. The Lord said, not you, not you, not you, not you, over and over. I have to wonder, it makes me think he's a good God. He's not a person who dumps rejection on people like that, unless he's saying, y'all have treated this one bad. Because he's not even thought of. The prophet is coming to your house. And he's not even thought to call. And finally, Samuel says, is there anyone else? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, there's that David out there. You think about that, and I think, and you can see how Eliab treated him. And I don't think it's too far speculative to say there's issues there, and God wanted to show, I love this one. This one's after my own heart. I think it's really cool that the Lord would do that. Have you ever had the Lord just choose you and you shouldn't have been chosen? Like if people are looking on the outside, but God sees a heart? Yeah. And I think he did it just as much for David as to let those other boys know. Stop treating him so bad. You can still see, they still treated him bad. But anyways, and the whole family, we're getting ready to step into it. I'm jumping ahead. The whole family is not going to have to pay taxes because of what David's doing here. Because when he takes Goliath down, that whole family doesn't have to pay taxes. Woo, thank you, IRS. Go Kimmy, yes. Kill the giant.
Right.
Wouldn't you be like, well, we're not doing anything. Well, give it a try, David. They probably know that he killed the bear. They probably know that he killed a lion. Nobody thinks of him. Anyways, these are just our wonderings. God was so specific to say, go to Jesse of Bethlehem and one of his sons. I just love, he could have specifically said his youngest son, David. And he chose to make every single boy, not this one. And I said, go. Fix
So we're at verse 29, back in 1 Samuel 17. And David said, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? Then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And these people answered him as the first ones did. I love this. I love this because in verse 28, he's been confronted with more accusation and rejection. And I know what's in your heart. I know the pride and the insolence of your heart. And then what he does is, what have I said now? Is there not a cause? So when you look up that word cause in the Hebrew, it is a broad definition, but it's the word dabar. But it includes the words power. Is there not power? Is there not a promise? Is there not provision? Is there not purpose? So when he's saying, is there not a cause? It's not just like, shouldn't we be upset by what is going on? It's like, should we not be upset and firm in the promise of his provision, right? Should we not be firm in the covenant? Because this one is outside of the covenant. But we have the promise and the provision of Jehovah.
That's good.
And so what does he do? He not only just says, is there not a cause, but he turned from him and toward another. So he turned from the one who said, I know the ugliness. I know what's in your heart. He turned from him and toward another. And so sometimes we got to make a pivot, right? We got to turn from what we are hearing and toward another. And so we need to not just toward another person, we need to turn toward the Lord.
Yeah.
Right? All right. So moving on now, verse 31 on the back, I think, or the next page. When the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul, and he sent for him. Then David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine.
No, he says your servant because he's already been playing the harp. He's already been playing the harp for Saul. I don't know that we really realize that. In verse 6, in chapter 16 there, he's anointed king. He's anointed king, but the Spirit of the Lord, I jumped, sorry. Verse 16, 14, the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul. A distressing spirit from the Lord troubled him. And Saul's servant said to him, surely a distressing spirit from God is troubling you. Let our master now command your servants who are before you to seek out a man who is a skillful player on the harp. And it shall be that he will play it with his hand. Always with his hand. He's faithful with the harp. He's faithful to play even worship and calm to a lunatic, demon oppressed king who will later try to kill him, even while he's playing the harp. He's faithful in whatever situation, whatever God puts in his hand, he's faithful with it. He's faithful with the harp. So, yeah, your servant used to keep his father's sheep. We're skip back to 17. Sorry, that's how I do. All right, so 17. So he is a servant. He is a servant.
Yeah, so your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep his father's sheep. Like, I always crack up with that. Used to keep his father's sheep. That was 2 hours ago, David. Like, you used to keep, 2 hours ago. But, he recognized, I'm on a different path now. I got a different purpose right now. But he's responding, right? You are not able, right?
Yeah.
We're squeezing, right? We're squeezing the life out of David here. You're not able. You're just a youth. It doesn't matter, right? He is a man of war since his youth. You can't do this. Right? We are taking the image of David and we're squeezing it, right? We're changing it. It's not even a head now.
Poor David.
Poor David. We'll fix him later. We'll fix you. But look how he responds. He doesn't yeah. My brothers think I'm worthless too. Yeah, they just put me out in the sheep because they don't think I can do anything. Yeah, no, he says, no, you're a servant, right? I used to keep my father's sheep. And when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it and struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. They didn't even get the lamb. I got the lamb back, right?
Yeah.
And then your servant has killed both lion and bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver the hand of this Philistine.
And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. He convinced him, right? The Lord be with you. And then he says, so Saul, and I love this next part, so Saul clothed David with his armor, and he put a bronze helmet on his head. He also clothed him with coat and mail. David fastened his sword to his armor and tried to walk, for he had not tested them. And David said to Saul, I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested them. So David took them off. So Saul's convinced. Saul's convinced, go, and Lord be with you. The Lord be with you, and you go in my armor. Mm-hmm. You go looking like me. Go looking like me. Go in how I operate. Do you realize, like right here, it makes sense that the army of Israel would be afraid, because in chapter 1 Samuel 13, 19 through 22, the Philistines didn't allow Israel to have any blacksmiths.
Yeah.
They didn't allow them. So it was constant fighting between Philistines and Israel. Just a few chapters before, what does that mean? But it was within that same season. They didn't allow them to have any blacksmiths, because they said so they weren't allowed to make any weapons. And it says only Saul and Jonathan had swords. They're the only ones. The only one with a weapon was hiding in his tent. He's the king. He should have been the champion of Israel, but he didn't do it. He hid. He had the weapons. The rest, I get why soldiers who don't have weapons are afraid to go up against Goliath. I get it. David, who has a sling, you know why he's so good with the sling too? That's his weapon. That's the weapon he's allowed to have. He doesn't have a sword, because the Philistines, I think sometimes the very thing that the enemy tries to keep us from might actually equip us in a different area. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like they didn't have access to swords. The rest of Israel didn't have access to swords and spears, but they could use rocks, and they could use them really well. So what was I going to say there? I cannot think. But I love that. So David took them off. Mm-hmm. I don't care that this seems like a more superior weapon. It's not me. I don't know who it is. If you start thinking about even your personality, how you see someone else fighting a battle, right? Somebody's gone through something, marriage troubles or health troubles, and they'll tell you, this is how I fought, which is awesome. We should ask, how did you get through this, right? But God has equipped you with spiritual gifts and spiritual weapons to get through a battle that you're facing. Yeah. It's always going to include the word. Let me just say that. I mean, but maybe you have a special gift of joy that's going to allow you to get out of something in a different way. Maybe God's given you a different personality and a different mindset than someone else. Don't try to be like someone else in a battle. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Be who God's made you to be. And just even in life, sometimes we want to imitate people that we really respect. Mm-hmm. Get that off, because it's just like the enemy trying to put stuff over who you are. You know, it's still a way of molding you, trying to change. And just honestly, here I go, this week. So I've been looking at different job opportunities, right? So I've been looking, and I'm not going to cry. So this week I was going for this, and I was like, well, this is different. I'm going to have to get like a power suit and like different. Do you know what I mean? And I went and I'm sitting through it. I'm like, ugh, I gotta take this off. This ain't me. And I'm not saying it just wasn't me, and it's not what God called me to do. And it didn't feel right. You know, it's like, no, this isn't who I am. This is the wrong path. This is a whole different way that I'm not supposed to go. And so, like, I made that hard. Like, I appreciate the offer. I appreciate this, but this isn't me. I take that armor off. Because I'm like, I'm artsy. I don't want to go in and be not me. Like, I was just becoming someone that I wasn't becoming, because it was like 2 days. But I'm just but do you see what I'm saying? Like how the enemy, he wants to mold you. Who knows if I stay in that path? Maybe I wouldn't even do this anymore. Or do you know what I mean? Like, where would that end up? If David had kept Saul's armor on, where would that take him? Would he keep pride? Would Saul be able to say, he won it because of my armor? You coward, you're over in the tent, stop. But anyways, so be who God, I guess this is for me too, be who God made you to be. You know, don't let Saul, if you're Saul, have that. But if you're David, be who God made you to be. Don't put on something else that you're not.
And I love that David didn't just go along with it. He didn't say, well, Saul's my, king. I've been anointed king, but secretly, Saul's really still the king. He told me I have to do this, and he's put this on me. And he's someone that I should listen to. So and it seems realistic that I should go face this giant with some protection. That seems valid, right? We masquerade that as wisdom, but really the wisdom is I have not tested it. I have not tried it. So we can't be afraid to take off with respect what even good, well-meaning people and those that have influence, godly, good influence over us. It doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It doesn't. But if someone is putting something on you that the Lord has not told you to put on, you got to say, I love you, but this ain't for me. This isn't what He has told me to clothe myself in. And I love when it says, I have not tested it. I looked that up, and our theme here, epic and adventure. It means to try, to attempt, to adventure. It means to adventure. And that word adventure means to expose to danger, to take the risk, to proceed despite a risk. It has not been adventured by me. And so something else that I see here, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm pulling to you.
Go.
But if we haven't tried it, if it's not the adventure that God is calling us to, we just got to take it off. We don't have to be ugly about it. We don't have to break friendships or but which is like, that's just not what the Lord's calling me to, right? Saul clothed David, but David took it off. Then he took his staff in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag. I read that last night. I loved it because it hit me. He still got a shepherd's bag. He still got his shepherd. He left the sheep with a keeper, and he still got his shepherd's bag, right? He never really took that off. He took off the armor, but he didn't take off being a shepherd. Because, look, David is a keeper. He puts the sheep in the hands of a keeper. He takes the food that he was entrusted with, and he puts it in the hand of the supply keeper, right? He is a keeper, and he takes it to the keeper. And here he is, a shepherd, and now he's seeing the whole army of Israel not being shepherded by their shepherd. Who's their shepherd? Saul, right? And so the whole army is out here. They're not being kept. They're not being protected, right? And so he says, I'm still a shepherd, and I have killed the lion. I have killed the bear, and I'm going to shepherd. If you won't do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to step up, and I'm going to shepherd with my shepherd's bag, right? I love that he doesn't leave behind who he is. He put them in a shepherd's bag in a pouch which he had, and his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine. So the Philistine came and began drawing near to David. The man who bore the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, right? More hatred coming at David. He disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good looking. So the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you would come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied.
Now, when you see that 45, you can see why he said, you come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin. Because y'all got all the weapons. You come to me with all the military might you've got. You've left us with nothing. But I come with a greater weapon, the name of the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I love that he knew that the name of the Lord was his weapon. It wasn't even in his stones that he's had practice with. It wasn't in his past exploits that he's taken down lions and bears. I know that you come to me with weapons, but I come to you in the name of the Lord. His name is higher than any other name. There is every knee bows at his name. So you can come to me with whatever you want. You put whatever name on it. His name is above every name, and that was David's weapon. And then David says, 46, it says, this day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. I love this because Goliath had told David, I'm going to feed you to the birds. I'm going to do all of these things to you. David not just says, I'm coming to you in the name of the Lord, but he takes everything that Goliath said that he was going to do to David, and he said, I'm going to do that to you and more. Right? He one-upped it. He didn't just say, I'm going to take your head, Goliath. He said, I'm going to take the heads of all of them. Right? So he didn't just make it personal about Goliath. He said, all of the Philistines, right? I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines. All y'all are going to die today. Right? And so I will take your head from you. And the Lord does not say with sword and spear, for the battles is the Lord's. He will give you into our hands. So it was when the Philistines arose and came and drew near to meet David that David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine.
Hold on, 47. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. David goes out by himself. He doesn't have an armor bearer going in front of him. But when he's like, I'm going to win this battle, and it's going to be us. Do you know what I mean? The mindset isn't me. The mindset is us. The mindset is we are winning this battle, and all of you are going down, and we are all winners. When you see David, David doesn't just, I've got my Goliath head. Later on, David's men go and kill more giants.
Yeah.
They go and kill the rest of Goliath's brothers. They go and take that down. When somebody goes out into battle like that, it strikes courage. That's what, when our yes matters. Your yes in whatever battle you're facing matters because it's won as a whole nation, as a whole group. It's just powerful into our hands.
It also speaks to how David would raise up other giant killers. It also speaks to how he was a keeper. He always left it in someone's hands. So killing Goliath is not the end of the story here because he's got brothers. And so what does he do? There's no other giant killers in Israel, right? Saul's not like saying, oh, go get this one. He'll take him on. No, there's no giant killers in Israel. It's going to be David now. But David is going to train up those that he can pass it to. Right? So if there's somebody, if you're a keeper and the Lord has entrusted you with something and there's nobody to pass it to, raise them up. We got to raise them up, right? We can't just drop it, but we have to hand it. So sometimes the act of handing is raising up too.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Wow. And you know what I love is I think that it's contagious. Because when you get around somebody that starts discipling, you've been discipled by somebody, those people go on, I mean, it's like this pyramid scheme. They go on and make more disciples. That's the way it should. Look at the 12.
Yeah.
12 of them set the world on fire. It's powerful.
Verse 49, it says, Then David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone, and he slung it and struck the Philistine in his forehead, so that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword and drew it out of its sheath and killed him and cut off his head with it. There is a battle where the enemy taunts you and intimidates you, but you know what? If you will face it, the Lord will equip you. The very weapons that the enemy fights you with, you can cut his head off with. If you will attack your enemy in the name of the Lord, the weapons he raises against you, he is just equipping you with. Because the sword of Goliath didn't go back to the Philistines. They kept it. David would fight with the sword of Goliath in years to come.
Yes,
he would be fleeing and come back to the temple and say, "Do you have a weapon here?" And he said, "Only the sword of Goliath." And he said, "I know it well. There's none like it." Right? And so he would continue to use that weapon in battles to come. So the weapon that the enemy wants to threaten you with, the very thing that he raises against you, he is just equipping your arsenal with. He is equipping you. Change your lens, change your perspective. When he comes at you with a diagnosis of cancer, when he comes at you with this or that, you remember his name, the name of the Lord is my weapon, and it's higher than any other name. But now, if I will face that Goliath, then I can say, cancer, you have to go, right? He is equipping you to fight in victory as you move forward.
That's good. Blessed be, I think it was David who said, "Blessed be the Lord who equips my hands for war." Nobody wants to go to battle, right? I mean, no, we never want to, but we learn the Lord. I mean, he's the Lord of hosts. He's the Lord of the hosts of armies. We learn how to engage that, and we're victorious in him.
Yes. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. Verse 52 says, Now the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines as far as the entrance of the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell along the road to Sharim, even as far as Gath and Ekron. Then the children of Israel returned from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. When Saul saw David going out against the Philistine, he said to Abner, to the commander of the army, "Whose son is this youth?" And Abner said, "As your soul lives, O king, I do not know." So the king said, "Inquire whose son this young man is." Then, as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, "Whose son are you, young man?" So David answered, "I am the son of your servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite."
He started out, I mean, everything in this chapter is about what's in your hand. Everything is what's in David's hand. And he started out taking care of the sheep. He started out, be faithful with what he's given you. Be faithful over little, and you'll be faithful over much. Whatever, if the sheep needed taken care of with the lion and the bear, he handled it. Whatever was next. Okay, cheese today. Cheese is the assignment today. So then he's faithful with the cheese. Harp's the assignment today, Lord. All right, I'll be faithful. Goliath is the assignment today. Yeah. Goliath is coming down. And he uses past victories to say, you're coming down just like one of those. Yeah. Remember the Lord and all he's done. He's never failed us. He has never failed us. Even if we've gone through hard times, we're still here. And we're still shouting victory. And we can help others get out of those pits because we've overcome them.
Yes. Yes.
By the blood of the Lamb and a word of our testimony. God got me out of that. He'll do the same for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he wasn't deterred by what others were saying. When he heard something, when Eliab was saying things against him, he said, is there not a promise? Don't we have a promise? And then he turned from him and toward another. And when Saul said, you can't go, you're just a youth, right? He's a man of war from his youth. This is a suicide mission. You can't do this. He brought up the victories that the Lord had led him through. He would not be deterred by those things. Saul clothed him in his armor that wasn't tested. And he said, I can't do this. He took them off, right? So he wasn't deterred by those things. In Jeremiah 1:5-9, the Lord's speaking, and he says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations. Then I said, ah, Lord God, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a youth. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am a youth, for you shall go to all to whom I send you, and whatever I command you, you shall speak. Do not be afraid of their faces, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. Then the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth, and the Lord said to me, behold, I have put my words in your mouth.
Have you ever said about yourself or thought, or of course the enemy said, you're only this. I'm just this. I'm just when I remember when I stopped working and I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm just a girl. I'm just, whatever that is. That's what it's saying here. You're just a youth. Jeremiah saying, I'm just a youth. Yeah. They said that about David. Yeah. You're just a youth. Paul says to Timothy, let no one look down on your youth, including you. Really, a lot of times, including you. Other people might do it, but don't agree with them. Yeah. How about we not? How about we not say amen to all the lies that the enemy said? One really cool thing, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That word formed means, it's yatsar in Hebrew, and it means to form, fashion, frame, preordain, to mold into a form, especially as a potter. Isaiah 43:1. Do you guys? We love Isaiah 43. It's special, but it says, "Fear not, he who created you, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Israel, for I have redeemed you." And I wondered, when you look those two words up, I'm like, that's really similar. Created and formed. Yeah. Created and formed. Why would you use those two words? And I started thinking, it wasn't until this week. God creates us, and he says, it is good, right? Mm-hmm. It's good. And then the world, the enemy's trying to mold and form us and mar us. Every lie tries to do that. But the Lord comes in, he who formed you. You can see it so plainly in the life of Jacob. Oh my goodness, even in the womb, he's wrestling for significance. Mm-hmm. He's struggling the enemy is not above going after children at all. And even in the womb, he was fighting. Supplanter. Jacob means supplanter. Mm-hmm. Heel grabber. He's trying to, me first. There's an insecurity bred in there. But God is able to form us and reform us again. And he who created it and he who formed you. And David agreeing with what the Lord said about him, I did this. No, the Lord's with me. The Lord's with us. That is agreeing with him and allowing him to rub out those lies. I was like, Lord, that's so powerful. If we will, anytime there's a rejection, anytime the enemy's trying to put his hands on you and mold and form you, you need to take it to the Lord. Lord, what do you say? Is this true? This isn't even true. Or is this a wrapped? Sometimes he wraps up a lie so good that you don't even know. But you take it to him. It says, my sheep know my voice. Mm-hmm. That's not your voice. It sounds like your voice, but it's not. It's not, there's no peace there. There's no joy there. There's no love. So the reason we did this is so you can see every time the enemy's trying to put that lie on you, he's trying to mold and form you. And we said, no, you don't get to squeeze me.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to part 2 of our epic series here at Treasure Hunters. To listen to more, go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or check out our Instagram page at Treasure Hunters INTL.